Well, now, listen. Pay yourself first when you get paid. What does that mean? I mean, I know it sounds kind of confusing. When you get paid, you pay yourself first. What exactly does it mean, Joseph? And by the way, there is a whole of importance of exactly doing that. And let me share you something, all right? Have you ever met somebody who is operating a business? Maybe say you're not even employed, okay? And then that business, you pay your workers. Let's say you have somebody who is doing like offloading, loading, and whatever. Maybe let's say you have like 3 guys whom you pay. You pay everyone, but you are not there in that pay slip. Then where do you get your food, all things? How do you run your day-to-day activities back at home? What does it mean? You steal from the business because you don't pay yourself. And the question is this: if you were to employ you, how much will you pay you? I repeat, if you were to get off that business and you are to employ somebody, how much will you pay you for what you do? And that's a very big question that people don't even ask themselves. Now, see, listen, if you're employed somewhere and you get paid at the end of the month, the first thing that you're supposed to think about is to pay yourself. Why should you separate that money that you get from your landing account or the current account, however you call it, from you paying yourself? This is it. See, I always tell you and never forget to remind you this, all right? And I'm writing this as you hit that subscription button and also liking this video. Yeah. Go ahead and do so, all right? And also comment down below, okay? Now, you see, I always tell you that we have 2 things in life. We have the sustainables, and we have what we call the development, all right? Development. You see, you cannot tell me that you're developing when you're just eating. You see, for example, if you buy yourself clothes, you buy a car, maybe let's say you take your kids to school, you eat, you drink, you do all those are not developments. Those are sustainables. And just because you're migrating from one house, let's say you're paying around rent for 30,000 and you go for 50, for 60, for 70, for 100,000, you're not developing. You're sustaining yourself in a high-end way. You know, people tend to think, for example, let's say maybe your food budget was going for maybe let's say 10,000 and now it's going for 25,000. You think you're developing. You're not developing. You're just eating in a different way. For example, if today I eat a very expensive meal in a 5-star hotel and someone eats in a kibanda. Kibanda in Kenya is these are makeshift hotels, yeah, or restaurants, however you guys call it. All of us are chasing what we call the energy, all right? That is energy from the Krebs cycle, if you did the biology. But the point is this: you're just eating different. It's like moving with a very big Mercedes G-Wagon. Someone is moving with E200 or something, whatever, that small car out there. The point is to move from point A to point B. Those are not development. Those are sustainables. But when you pay yourself, when you say, hey, guess what, Joseph, you're employed somewhere, you get this amount of money at the end of the month. Or let's say, hey, Kevin, you're employed, or Mercy, you're employed at the end of the month, you get 70,000 at the end of the month. And out of that 70,000, guess what? I have dreams. One day I want to buy a piece of land. I want to build my own home. I want to retire in my own home. I want to buy myself I want to buy myself some infrastructure. I want to invest in treasury bills. You want to grow, you want to develop to the next level. You get the thing. See, development is what differentiates people A or person A from person B. That's a reality. Let me tell you one secret, and don't think I'm rude on this. I'm going to tell you the truth. Poor people compete on the sustainables. Poor people compete on the sustainables. What do I mean? Like, for example, when I pay a house rent of very expensive, I have to show people out there. For example, if you live in Kilimani, Kileleshwa, Hurlingham, okay, I know if you're not a Kenyan, you may not understand what I'm talking about. You know, if you go to that country, those posh areas where people rent their houses, see, when you pay house rent for those areas, you want everybody to know that you're doing so. See, poor people compete on the sustainables. You want to show people that you are paying school fees for a very expensive school fees for your kids and such and you're barely surviving. You want to show people that you are driving a heavy machine. You know, you want to show people that anyway you are wearing Gucci and all those. Poor people compete on the sustainables. You just want to show people that you are living a good life. But wealthy people compete on the development. Hey, you know what? That flat that is on the Kenyatta Avenue, that flat that is on the 56th Street on whatever off your left, that's my building, that's my tower, that's my whatever. And by the way, do you know I have like 600 acres on the coast? Do you know I have, those are the things that they compete on. And by the way, they don't even talk about it. The success itself tells you these guys are successful. That's what you're supposed to understand. See, and we have a problem with what we call the middle income because they focus more majorly on what we call the sustainables. They don't even think about development. When I say pay yourself first, I simply mean out of that salary that you get, let's say maybe you get like a 70,000 a month, 70,000 a month. And by the way, for those guys who maybe earn 15,000 a month, I'm not leaving you behind, all right? So say you earn this 70,000 at the end of the month, all right? So maybe let's say let's agree one thing, my dear brothers and sisters. Most of the money that we make in our lives, especially if you have families and such, goes towards sustainables. Eating, drinking, clothing, school fees, paying debts, and all those kind of things to sustain our lives. Because there is no way you can communicate. There's no way you can, sort of talk a language of investment if you barely even surviving. You do not even have something in your stomach. You don't even have something to cover yourself. You see, you cannot talk about that language. And that's why we talk about the hierarchy of priorities and the hierarchy of the development. We have the food, the shelter, the clothing under the foundation of the hierarchy. The moment you conquer that, you go to the personal development, you go to until you reach to a point whereby you start becoming influential and significant to the rest of the society. All right, I talked about that. You can check my older videos. Now, see, out of the 70,000 that you get at the end of the month, let's say a whole 50,000 goes towards sustaining yourself. 50,000 goes towards sustaining yourself. All right, and do not put debt into this. Debt is not a sustainable. Debt is a development. Why? If you took a quite of a wise debt, maybe you took a debt to develop, maybe you took a debt to buy a property, maybe you took a debt to finance, maybe let's say building some infrastructure somewhere. For example, maybe you wanted to buy some structure, maybe you wanted to, build some rentals, so that they can generate you some income. So when you take a debt, please don't put it under the sustainables. Debts, it's under the development. But if you took a debt to buy food, to pay rent, to pay school fees, by default, now that goes to the sustainables. Now, the point is this. Out of this, if you know very well, you survive on 50,000 Kenyan shillings a month, you can be able to pay your fees there. You can pay your the electricity, the water, the clothing, the entertainment, and all those kind of things about sustainables. Well and good. So immediately when the 70 Gs shows up in your account, when I say 70 Gs, I mean like maybe 180 after deductions and what have you, the 70 kicks in, all right? So immediately what you're supposed to do is to pay yourself. To pay yourself is what I've been talking about since I made this channel, about savings, investments, and all those kind of things. That is paying you. You see, when you pay you see, listen, I really hope you're going to get this message because it's very sensitive, all right? You may forget what I've said since I started talking, but don't forget this. When you're employed and you get 70,000, your employer assumes. You see, these employers, they are guided by the laws of the land. For example, if you go to America, they say the minimum wage is $15 per hour. If they ask them, let me tell you one thing, there is nothing ugly like people who employ, most of them. Some are very good and amazing. I'm not including them in this list. If there were no rules and regulations, they can even pay you $6 per hour. They would love to take down that minimum wage all the way down because nobody's in a business of making you rich. That's what you forget. Nobody's there to make you rich. They work under the rules and regulations. For example, in Kenya, there is a new rule that is coming up. If you're employing somebody under the, we call them the private security, they're not supposed to get less than 30,000 Kenyan shillings at the end of the month. That's a rule. But those firms, if they were asked, right now, some pay even 15. 13, 20, 21, 20, you get what I'm saying? So when people pay you, those who have employed you, when they pay you 70,000, it is presumably, remember I told you something here. Back then during the slavery age, we used to be given food, the shelter, and the clothing. You get what I'm saying? So people complained, we don't want to be slaves. We want to work by ourselves. Guess what they do? Okay, fine, no problem. We won't give you the shelter. We won't give you the clothing, neither will you give the food. So we were kicked out from all those places where we used to get all those things. And then now we're going to pay you, you go cater for yourself. But that equivalent amount of money that they used to give you on food, the shelter, the clothing was substituted to your salary, to your income or your wages. Actually, the correct term, salary is a bit decent. The correct term they used to give it is wage, your wages. So this amount of money, they have actually calculated and realized this amount of money is ought to sustain yourself, not to develop you, is to sustain you. Is you to think on what you can do with that what is meant to sustain you, to develop you. I really hope I'm making sense on this, all right? So now what you do on this, they expect you to, because they know you are a middle incomer. You want this amount of money. Maybe you want 200,000 a month. You want 300. They know you're a middle incomer, and they can actually articulate how your brain functions. You want to compete or your fellow middle incomers on how you live and where you live and all those kind of things. Because the moment you become enlightened, nobody can control you. So this amount of money now, what you're supposed to do, if they expect you to pay a house rent 20,000 and truly you can afford it, don't live in that 20,000 house. Go live in at least, let's say 15. You have salvaged 5,000. So if you keep that 5,000 continuously in a bank account, that's now when you pay yourself. Just in case something happens out of where you're employed and they tell you, hey, guess what? We no longer feel or think like your services are needed in our service, in our what we call company. What do? You haven't been paying yourself, you're just sustaining yourself. Guess what happens? You become frustrated, you curse everybody and everything around you. So when you pay yourself first, you know you survive on 50, you get the 20. Directly you put it in account where it is actually growing. And I said in 2024, henceforth, in 21st century, we no longer save money. We invest directly, no matter how small it is, even if you're on 15,000. You get what I'm saying? Even if you can salvage 1,000 bob in this at the end of the month, take that 1,000 bob and put it in an investment somewhere. Continuously, you feed that beast. Because if you do not have the consistency, you do not have the discipline, you do not have the aspect of sacrificing. I know some of the motivational speakers will tell you, hey, don't live below your means. What you're supposed to do with this 70,000, think about of getting another extra income. It is true, but how do you do that? You are a teacher, you employ from morning to evening. What else do? You don't have time. The only thing you can do is to let your money work for you. You know, there is a situation whereby you can work for money, a situation where money can work for you. If you have time for business, go ahead and do business. You have an extra income. All right. But if you're employed from morning to evening, some people are employed from morning all the way up to 9 p.m. I mean, you're telling them, go look for another income. Where do they get it? See, there's a difference between real information and practical information. The only way you create another source of income is, first of all, develop discipline, management, what you have at hand. See, when you develop that discipline and management, you channel it towards an investment. By default or by virtue of that, you've created another source of income. And when you create that source of income, that is balances from it balances that what you get from active income. Even if you get fired, your life continues. That is exactly what you do. But the problem is this: you survive under the mercies of your employer. And I do not know who reprogrammed people. They killed their talents and their abilities. Now they talk about what they're trained for. And that's why you find people compete for jobs, don't compete for creation of jobs. That's the difference. I know this message may not work well with some of you guys, but that's the reality about life. But anyway, the point is this: when you pay yourself first, you're safeguarding your future. When you pay yourself first, you safeguard your future in the sense that now you channel that cash towards an investment. And just in case anything happens, such as being fired or retrenchment, however they're going to give it the name, provided they discontinue you from where you get that money, that way you can have what we call the soft landing. When you have the soft landing, guess what? Even the stability of mind is still there. You can be able to focus. By the way, as a man, because in African society, men are known to provide, all right? So, excuse me. As a man, how do you feel? Or maybe as a lady, maybe you're the provider. As a lady or as a man or as a human being, as an adult, let me use that term, okay? How does it feel if you have a family somewhere, you know they have food, you're paid their school fees, you're paid their... How do you feel? When everything, no, even if you see your wife calling, definitely this is not a call for today's food. They're calling you maybe for something else. How do you feel when you're even relaxing with your fellows, Ben, or whatever? You feel good, you feel satisfied, your brain is working, you are stable, you can actually become creative. But the moment you see your family is struggling, you cannot even be fresh here. It's true. You can even surpass some of the opportunities out there without you even realizing. So it's always good to make sure that at least you all the time safeguard the future. Try the much as you can to safeguard. I know we as human beings, we are limited to some things. There are some things, for example, we don't know nothing about tomorrow, but by God's grace, you see, there is a role that God plays and there are a role that we play. Play your role. That's what we say. Control the controllables. That's what is out of your control. We believe that everything gonna fall into place. All right? You get what I'm saying? So the point is this: pay yourself first whenever you get paid, and that way you're gonna develop and grow yourself. Perhaps I'll make a whole new video. By the way, if you're in agreement with this, tell me in the comment section if you want me to make this video. If you're a business person, what does it mean to pay yourself? You want me make that video? I'm gonna go ahead and make that video. Depends on if you guys are gonna say, hey, go ahead and make that video. If you pay, or rather if you're employed, if you have a business, what do I mean by paying yourself? For now, it's a goodbye. But don't forget, my number is always on the comment section. It's on the description of this specific video. Okay, some people tell me, Joseph, where is your number? What do I mean when I say my number is on the description? You see below where those number of viewers, where I have likes and whatever. Below that, there is a small description out there. There is somewhere ... like 3 dots and then a word more. Click that more. If you click that more, a whole description opens up. You're going to see my number there and you're going to see my email there. Grab that number. Let's have a conversation because I offer those services at a personal level. For now, it's a goodbye and see you in the next one.